Hello everybody, it's Curtis. No, that's not how we say it, we'll start over. Hello, it's Curtis from Omaha Knife, and today we're going to be showing you how to replace a handle in a Gransfors Splitting Maul. The process is the same for any of their axes, we just happen to have a maul in front of us. And I got ahead a little bit by drilling some holes because everybody knows how to drill holes, right? Let's back up and show you what we're using. This is some silly thing that I made ages ago when I used to do a lot of these. I'd replaced the bunks on my boat. That's what the wood is from, but it's deck wood. And I used the all thread because when I made it, I thought I'd want to open and close, but I never adjusted it. So, anything similar to that is pretty easy. Most people just use a bench vise, but I've seen enough old axe heads with vise marks on them that I don't like to do that. I never have. When I say I don't like to, I just never have because of that. I'm sure it works just fine. If you're going to use a vise, put some wood on either side of the head. You're going to avoid the marks. But anyway, this is what I've always done. And it's we're shooting this during the coronavirus pandemic, but I promised that cough was nothing. And that gives us some time to shoot videos. Things are a lot slower in the store. We're in Nebraska and things weren't shut down completely, but people are being very careful and they don't come into the store unless they really need to. But anyway, back to this. So I drilled the holes, and I'll tell you kind of what I did and why, and then we'll ream them out. The spacing of the holes is so each hole holds up on its own. You notice this hole is a little bit smaller because it would break through. And, I worry about some details that I'm sure are nothing, and probably you do also. The wedge we'll talk about later. I generally pick the drill bit the size of the wedge, and I don't drill out here. You've probably seen other people drill out there, but my experience is you weaken the whole thing, and you can like collapse it in on itself and like re-wedge it, if that makes sense, into the head. So we're gonna now go in and just ream on it, and we're just trying to get rid of all the wedge. Now, probably doesn't matter. It's one of those things that I care about that doesn't really matter. I try to not hit the steel. If the drill goes into the head a little bit wherever, it'll be filled with wood. Doesn't really matter, but I try to be careful and not have it hit the steel. And the metal wedge is still there. We're gonna undermine that as much as we can and see if we can pick it out with needle nose or vice grips. I have needle nose vice grips that I normally use for this, but I think they're at home, so we've got some other things we'll try. And you don't have to drill in very far. By the way, with my coughing, if you could see outside, the crabapple trees are in full bloom and all that. It is just allergies. So we're just trying to remove the wedge is what we're trying to do. And I'll get a little closer on the edge here, but that's not enough wedge to hold the whole thing back. And as far as depth goes, your wedge is really only working in the first inch. I'm going more than an inch in, but as long as you free up that first inch, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Yeah, I've got a spot there that I want to get. All right, so I've drilled under the wedge. The metal wedges that Gransfors uses are actually pretty shallow. So I'm clear under it. Pretty clear through all that. And I want to be somewhat respectful of your time. A lot of people watch these videos to get the information, and some people watch them as entertainment. When you're getting information, watching somebody drill really kind of sucks. So I'm trying to make good use of your time. So let's see if we can pull that wedge out. I've got needle nose pliers, and I also have a screwdriver. My best experience has been, yeah, there you go. So that one kind of could be reused. I don't reuse them, but if you pound it flat, you could. So now we have the wedges essentially gone. It should come out pretty easy. we're going to pound it out. This is an old hammer that I got at a yard sale or whatever. It's a 4-pound plum. I redid it, re-wedged it. I sanded the handle down, used the same handle, and just put a new wedge in it. And the tool I use is a 3/8" bolt. That's what, a 1/2 or 9/16 head. I think 9/16. Bigger would be better in this case, but I didn't grab a bigger one. Let's see how this does. So you can see it's moving. When you're doing a regular axe, I move end to end. So pretending this is a regular axe, you can put the head here, and then when you come up here, you may have to flip it over or have bolts of different sizes, or worry about it less than me and just swing harder. See, that's going pretty easy because I'm choked up. I'm not hitting it very hard. All right, so we can stop there. You know where that's going. We'll stop and get further along and splice the video back in. So we'll be right back. Okay, so Ann said that I took away some of the fun from it. So we're gonna put this back in, and I knocked the handle clear out, and she said that we missed the fun part on the video. So I put it back in, and then we'll just hit it one more time. Okay, now we'll go get the other handle. Okay, so now we're ready to put the handle in. And we started doing this and got interrupted, and now we're redoing this. So if I say something I said before, I apologize, because of some details, I don't know if I said them in the segment we're keeping or the segment that we're recording over. But anyway, remember I told you, hold on, I told you that I didn't want the drill to hit the metal, and we didn't. Again, it doesn't matter, but you can see it's clean inside. Now, if you're redoing an old axe head, there's cleanup stuff you may have to do. If it's been bunged in on the top, you know, to where it's folded over, you have to take a file and get rid of that stuff. And that can really suck. Some of those are pounded pretty bad. But get a file, you know, the regular eye shape, get small there. It takes a little file, and it's a drag, but you really need to do that if you're doing those. So, all right, so back to this one. We don't have any fitting to do because the handle is correctly made for this head, so we just put it on. Now, so we're gonna put it on like that. The guard goes there, but if you don't know, go look at a picture online. Now, what we did, even though I was 100% sure, I went and checked, because it's awful when you make mistakes that could have been prevented and you have something to fix. So this is actually my own maul. So the guard goes that way. And I'm going to tell you a story about my maul. You can see that it's been used and been stored a little bit. It's got some rust there. But you can see it has this beautiful wood grain on the side, and that would tell you that it's really straight wood grain, which I previously told you was no big deal, right? Except that it looks cool. So I got this maul because I really liked how it looked. However, when it looks that cool, you're always afraid to use it because you might bung up the handle. So it was kind of a mistake to get the pretty one if it's something that you want to be using very often. So we'll set that aside and get to work on this one. So again, on the maul, the shield is longer on the side that you're going to be contacting wood, because what the shield is for, when you're splitting wood, the blade can go in and not split the wood wide enough to clear the handle, if I said that right. So then the wood, where it's a perfectly good hit, your firewood can still be chewing up the handle. If you overstrike, it also reinforces the handle. So we're going to kind of get it started by bouncing it on the floor. Hold on, if I want to show on the slot, some people who like to use the old words, we'll call it a kerf, and we'll call a handle a haft or a helve, but that's like Shakespeare or whatever. Today it's a handle, and that's a slot. So in the slot, when you're driving the wooden wedge in, when it's getting really tight, the handle, the hickory is much harder than the poplar or whatever this is, and it'll start shaving wood off. I took a razor blade and kind of did a V-cut. You can do it with sandpaper or whatever, but V-cut it a little bit so that it can't dig into the wedge as much. All right, so now we're back to, we're gonna do this right. So again, we've got the guard, the blade in the same spot. So we're gonna bounce it on the floor a couple times so it holds it. Then, hi puppy. Then we're going to get the mallet. Now, if you don't have a mallet, 2x4 that's like 18 inches long works really well also. And I've used, there's a 2x4 around here. I found the mallet before the 2x4, but I've probably done more with the 2x4 than I have with the mallet. So you just hold it in the air, and as you pound on this end, the weight of the head can't accelerate like the handle can, so you drive it in. And with something soft, and the 2x4 is pine, so it's much softer than hickory, so you're not going to mark up the bottom of your handle. So you pound it on, and the first few hits goes quite a ways. See, we're already pretty much there, but we're not there. So it takes harder pounding. Now it's getting there, it's getting tight, because you'll feel it in this hand. The resonance changes. And let's have a look. Did I mention, I don't think I did, we noticed that this handle had been on something before. I wish I had shown you before. We see that every now and then. I don't know why that is, but every now and then handles will come in, and clearly they've been on and taken back off. So what I'm doing now is looking down the cutting edge to see if it is lined up. So, you know, the line that would extend from the cutting edge, make sure it's lined up here. If you're doing an axe where you're removing wood to make it fit, if you don't get it equal, the amount of wood that you take off each side, your blade's going to wind up like that. And the way you fix that, take it back off, give some thought to, and what is it? If it's too far on this side, take wood off of the same side that it's off to, I think is the right thing. But anyway, think about it and make sure, take some more wood off, drive it on again if you care about that. And I always do when I'm doing them. You can't really tell when you're using the axe, but I care. Now, when you look at this, the way it's going on, if I'm holding it right, it's not perfectly straight. We're gonna hammer the hammer side down a little bit, and we'll probably finish tweaking this off camera to save you a couple minutes of watching. But you can see that previously, when it was mounted, it was driven on a little further. So we're gonna match that because we know that's probably the proper depth. But as you go, you check these things. You don't just drive, or I don't, just drive it on all at once. Now, I'll show you something. If you make a mistake, if you're like, oh no, I put this in backwards, there's a little bit of handle sticking up, right? So you can just, and knock it. We didn't have it very tight, so it knocked out really easy. Now, when I say not very tight compared to our final, obviously we're pounding on it pretty good. So now we'll stop the camera, we'll get it set on straight and come back. Okay, now we're ready to put the wedge in, and you'll notice we added some painter's tape to the cutting edge. We didn't do that before because part of the project on this is sharpening it, and it wasn't sharp at all. A lot of people sharpen it before they put a handle on it. I never do it that way, but even if it's not that sharp, if you drop it, you know, it could cut you. So we did put tape on it, just, I guess, to set a good example. But so I want to show you this before I do it. We're not going to drive the wedge in here because, of course, that would be pushing the handle down. I'm just having it hold it while I show you some things. The gap is pretty small. Even we've razor bladed it to get it open, and I had to put the wedge on sandpaper and make it a little more wedgy to be sure we were going to get a good start on that. And then also we're going to put linseed oil on the wedge. We're doing that for a couple reasons. One, or three reasons. One, it gives it a little bit of lubricant driving in. Two, it'll help it kind of stick. And three, just because it makes people feel good putting linseed oil on axe handles. Well, I mean, there are things you do that you're not really sure it makes a difference, but you know it's not going to harm it to do it. And linseed oil in the wedge is one of those. But in other axes I've done, on my own axes, I don't put a metal wedge in. I like how wood grain looks, so I put the wedge in, then I sand it so it looks cool. And a couple times I've had a wedge work loose, and both of those, or neither of those I'd forgotten to put linseed oil on them. Now, if I'd put the metal wedge, it would have held it in. But when you're using it, it starts working loose. 2 out of 2 of them have been dry wood on dry wood. So I try to remember to use that. Some people use glue. I think Gransfors now uses glue, since I don't use the metal wedges in the smaller ones now. If you do use glue, it doesn't take much. You don't have to, really goober that thing up. So we're going to take this out and get the wedge. All right, so we accidentally stopped, but we're restarting. So I'm just going to get a little bit of linseed oil on both sides of this, just a little. No harm in getting a lot, other than it drips on stuff. Now, one thing that Anne mentioned, see what I said about having the tape on it? In case you dropped it, but it didn't hit my foot. So, but that's why we weren't using a lot of linseed oil, and we're using it over that. So, find a paper towel so we don't leave fingerprints on everything. So one thing too, notice this one has pretty straight grain front to back. People love that. That actually is not the big deal that you might think. Going back to the early days of YouTube, the first ever axe video on YouTube was called An Axe to Grind. And it's been loaded by different people since then, but a guy from the Forest Service did it. It's a really excellent video telling how to rehandle an axe, and really, really good information. He did a great job. And honestly, I think that 99 or maybe 100% of the people doing YouTube videos on axes didn't know how to do it, or at least not do it well, before that guy's video. I'd been doing them a long time, but I didn't know you could do them nicely like that. I mean, my dad didn't, other people I knew didn't, they just got it on. Now, one thing too, it's surprising how hideous it can look and still stay on. But anyway, that dude did a nice job, and in the process, he mentioned about grain alignment, and people just grabbed a hold of that and ran with it like it was the most important thing in the world, even though it was just a casual mention. So the axe and handle manufacturers were taken off guard by that, and I was trying to move the wedge. So it's wider than the gap. I was trying to move it so it shears a little bit off the front and the back. Now this is softer wood than hickory, so it will shear and it doesn't matter. I'm pounding it with an axe so that I can contact the whole thing like that. Probably doesn't matter. If the wedge breaks, just keep driving it in 2 pieces or 3 pieces, and that may even be better because some of the pieces may drive further than others and get a better fit. But anyway, so let's drive it. Now, we're peeling some wood there, but mostly it's fitting. We're peeling some wood there, but it's fitting pretty well. A lot of people are gonna stop here. I'm gonna pound further. Someone once told me that you could break that, so looking at a regular axe here, that you could actually break the steel by pounding a wedge in too tight. That just didn't make sense to me, so I don't worry about it. I've never seen it happen, but I always worry about them coming off, even though I said just a moment ago, it's amazing how ugly some hang jobs can be and still hold the head on. Now I feel like it's not really moving, but it's also not breaking apart too much. So we'll pound some more. It'll definitely stay at this point if we stop. That was bad. No harm in it, but yeah, I feel like it's really not moving at all. So we are going to stop there, and then we'll cut the wedge off. All right, so this is actually the next day. We had phone started ringing and people coming in, so we didn't get finished yesterday with that. And I normally don't watch the videos. Like most people, I don't like hearing my own voice, and I especially don't like hearing my own voice if there are other people around listening too. I think most people are that way. But anyway, so it's the first time I've ever watched one of the videos that we've done, and I made some notes of things to add to it. So we're going to go through those now from my list. They're not all important, but we'll cover them. For one thing, you saw Izzy the boxer. She works here. She's the official greeter. She's been coming here since she was 8 weeks old, and she's 6 now. And she's good at greeting people and then staying out of the way. The pit bull looking dog is an occasional visitor here. His name is Rowdy, and Izzy does not like him. Izzy likes people. Rowdy is young, likes to get in her face, and she just totally snubs him, does not like hanging with Rowdy. So anyway, that's who you saw yesterday. One thing that we didn't mention clearly enough probably, Omaha Knife is a Gransfors dealer. We sell a lot of axes, and we stock the replacement handles. Let's walk down there and just kind of poke through some of them. We try to always have all the handles in stock, but that can be difficult. For example, the handle that we're working on now was the last 450 handle, or Maul handle, which is the same handle as large and long splitting axe. We just got an order in, but didn't get any of those handles. So here's these crates are Gransfors handles. Over here are Council tool handles. So, you know, we can just look and see it's the exact handle, like the Maul, the exact handle that you would get on it otherwise. The price of handles, $32 for a regular axe handle. Now that's interesting. Hold on, I'm going to lay down my notes. It's kind of interesting how they chose to do it. Interesting, maybe overstating it, but I'll explain it to you. The price for an axe handle with a metal guard is $40. Without a metal guard is $32. So the metal guard is more work. A tiny little handle like this is the same price as that handle. The reason they do it that way, it's the labor in making the handle and sorting and all that stuff that is more of a thing than the cost of the actual wood they start with. It was accounting issues, keeping track of everything. It was a real drag. So handles like this are kind of overpriced and this one underpriced, but in the end it makes it easier. That's what Gransfors told us. So it works for me. I guess it's kind of like when you're at a restaurant, you get good service or not so good a service, you tip the same. So kind of the same theory there, I guess. So let me find my note and see what our next subject was going to be. Oh, so on the axe that we're, or the maul that we're doing, that's a customer's maul that just did not have the ability, the tools and space to do it. We don't like doing it just because we're small, lack of time. We're doing this video so you can do your own. We sell the handles. We would like to send the handle and let you do it. That's why we're doing the video. In a pinch, we will do them, obviously. What we no longer do, no matter what, is put a handle on for some random piece. You know, if you have a garage sale axe head and you want to come in and buy a handle and have us do it, we just no longer have time to do those. Let's see, we talked about pressing and okay. Some other random things that we may not have here to show. Yeah, we'll talk about those when we get back to the maul. A couple of things on the list. Yeah, we'll do that. Let's stop this and go to the back to the shop. No, what? Oh, yeah, all right. Let's look. We did get a Gransfors order in yesterday. Let's go over there.
Let's cut our knives.
And show you how this stuff comes to us. It's not really what a lot of you would expect with how nicely the axes are made. They don't spend any money to have fancy packaging. So this order came in yesterday. There was some stuff we were waiting on that was in this order. So some of the boxes have been opened and dug through, but this is what they look like. Here, come down to this one. So I'm not 100% sure if this was the top or bottom. Nope, this was the top. So paper on the top. And then this stuff, and I think we've showed this in other videos, but not everybody would have seen those. So this, the way they've cut that cardboard, and it's reused cardboard, and then they're laid in here like this, paper, and this is how we ship them with a lot of paper around the hood. We use more actually than what Gransfors did here. But the layers separated, by the way, kind of some cool, right there anyway. A little bit cool looking on that one. But this separates the layers, and then some paper to keep the heads from banging into each other. For people who like dark wood, that one's that one's pretty cool. And that side's fairly cool. When we get Gransfors orders in, we tend to do that. We gather around, we start pulling them out, and it's like, oh, look at this one, look at this one. And it's fun. So anyway, you can look at the others. I don't think we need to dig out others, but it's a mess. This perforated cardboard leaves a lot of little pieces on the floor. So after we do this, throw out we reuse the boxes that are not mushed, but a lot of times half of them are mushed. So we get those thrown out, the axe is put away, then we vacuum the area because there's a lot of cardboard stuff. So that's what an order looks like coming in. Now we'll go back to the shop. Okay, so now we're back at the shop, and there's an ant crawling on this. This happened overnight. There were none yesterday, but these little, some people call them sugar ants, crawling around on that thing. I flicked some off of it already, and there's some on the, walking around on the carpet. So a neat trick on that, I'm not complaining, I'm gonna share this trick with you. The fake sugar that's in the pink packet will kill those ants. It takes a few days or maybe a week, but if you take some packets of that and pour it out behind the fridge or someplace out of the way and let the ants pick it up, they'll be gone. So I already did that. That's why it was on my head, or on my mind. I did that just a little bit ago. But anyway, so back to this. I'm gonna look at my notes for things that I wanted to mention to you from when I watched the video. When we did this one, so the wedge isn't as wide maybe as the one we took out, and it's going to be less wide once we sand it down. Gaps vary a little bit. The wedge didn't go in as deep as they sometimes do. There's no magic correct depth. Just go till it's tight. Now, if you get it all the way in and it never gets really tight, that's a problem. But if it doesn't go very far, it's fine. So, and those will vary as you go. Something I mentioned, and I don't think I said why, hickory on the handle, and I think it's poplar that they use on the wedge. And the reason they use poplar is it's kind of an elastic wood. Elastic's maybe overstating it, I don't know the right word. But anyway, it'll compress a little bit and it's springy, so it makes for a better wedge. So that's why you don't, or that's why you use poplar and not pine or hickory or whatever. Now, I talked about glue on the wedge, but I didn't say why I don't like glue. If you put it together and you glue it, and then a little bit later you see that you made a mistake, if you glued the wedge in, you buy a new handle. If you didn't, you can put like sheetrock screws. When I do it, I put like one here, get a claw hammer, work that side a little bit, that side a little bit, and pull the wedge back out. I haven't done that very many times, but the times I have done it, I was very happy I was able to. This isn't the subject today, but if it's an old head and there's rust, when you're taking the old handle out, you have to pound on those a lot harder. They're not gonna come off as easy as what we did. Last thing, on my maul, the rust there's no rust on the head that you see, but if you take oil, basically any oil, gun oil if you have it, car oil, whatever, and rub that down, just rub oil on it, then rub the excess off. On the entire head also, it'll help control that. I didn't do that. It doesn't bother me that much, but I should have oiled it. I have since. But so back to this. I've already cut the wedge off, what's sticking out, and I cut it fairly close, but I didn't want the teeth dragging on the handle because I'm going to sand that down, make it look pretty cool. And we use this scroll saw. I think you already saw it. I cut it off with a scroll saw. If you're doing a jigsaw, well, any saw, you want really fine teeth. If you don't, you're going to be chipping as you get to the edge. And you'll notice you can't tell which way I cut because it's not broken on the end. And when I got to the edge, whichever end it was, I slowed way down. Another thing, this tape on the side probably doesn't matter, but since it's metal on metal, I didn't want to put any scratches on the head. It's used, but I don't want to send it back to the customer with marks on it that weren't there when he sent it to me. So we're going to sand it down so they're the same height, and we are going to put the metal wedge in, but we'll come back and show. We'll come back and show you. But hold on. People say that comment on this on new axes. See we're going to clean that up. I don't know what you call it, but the kind of splinters. When we put that wedge in, remember we were trimming with just the head of the axe. It was pushing that. People will see that on a new axe and they're concerned about it. It just happens, and they also put them in with a press. So there's some press marks on new axes, and people looking to buy a new axe probably aren't watching this, but it's just something that happens. I'm going to clean it up with a razor blade just because I like how how nice stuff looks. So we'll be right back when we're almost done. All right, so we are done with this maul. Sanded down the top. A couple hours have passed. We've had some things go on and keep getting distracted from it. So I don't remember exactly what I said before, but anyway, took a razor blade and trimmed up the little things. It don't really matter, but I like those details, and a lot of other people do too. Sanded the top so the wedge is even. I put some linseed oil on it as well, pounded in the wedge. Now that, I think I pointed that out before. That's not me hitting that. That's, remember, this handle had been inserted before, and that mark was there from when it was taken back out. Put the metal wedge in. I said I put linseed oil, so I think that's really all there is to see there. I also sharpened it. And I don't know, you probably don't see anything, and actually that's pretty ideal to not see anything. So cuts paper, although it tore a little bit there. So there must be a little nick in it, or a little bit of burr I didn't get. I should have maybe tested this first. There we go. So people will tell you that a maul doesn't really need to be sharp. When it's sharp, it cuts in better. So it does. It doesn't have to be sharp. It makes your job easier when it is sharp. Is there anything? Oh, let's talk just a little bit about sharpening. It's its own subject, a whole thing that I don't really like to talk about, but since I sharpened it, I know people are going to be asking. I brought a couple sharpening stones to the shop to show you. Let's step over here. Here's the Gransfors sharpening stone. We'll open it. Now I'm putting the maul down so that the blade is in a safe spot so that nobody kicks it. So it's a two-sided stone. This is like a field use thing. The Gransfors side, and then stick that one back on, and there's the fine side. It's a nice stone. It costs like 50 bucks. It's a fairly expensive stone. The Lansky is like 15 bucks, but it's not near the quality of the stone. So sometimes you look at something like this and think, wow, Gransfors is really just sticking it to you because they know you're going to want a stone with the same name. But no, there's a definite quality difference in that stone. And then this one, this is just from our display. It's an old Norton stone, brand new in box. So we just brought that to show you. You can also sharpen on sandpaper on a board. Again, it's its own subject. I'm going to just tell you a couple things and we'll be done with that. When you first sharpen, do little bits and look for the scratches you're making here. You want to just barely be getting down to the edge. If you get too much to the edge, you're going to be making it steeper. I think you can see my fresh work there. You're going to be making it, if you make it steeper, you do that a few times, it's not going to split as well because it's too wedgy. Now on a splitting maul, that's not as big of a problem as it is on an axe. But anyway, subject for another day. So in conclusion, don't send us your stuff, buy a handle from us and do what we did. Don't make us do it again. We try to stock all the Gransfors handles all the time, but it doesn't always work out that way. OmahaKnife.com. If you have trouble with the website, you can call and we'll make sure we have the right handle, or if you're not sure what handle you need. Another little side note, the Gransfors handles are nice. They look great, but don't try to use them in other brand axes because the eye size typically is smaller on Gransfors and they're just not going to work. We stock all the products, the Gransfors axes and mauls and stuff, so hit us up for that too. I hope we didn't miss anything. We'll wrap this up and catch you next time. Check us out, Instagram, Omaha Knife, Facebook, Omaha Knife, and of course the website, OmahaKnife.com. Did I miss anything?
I think we're good.
All right, thanks for watching the video.